Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Civil Rights Agenda's CAN TV show. This show is interactive, so we welcome any calls to discuss whatever we're discussing, comments, questions, anything at all. I am Jackie McKethan. I am your host, and today's guest is the Honorable Alderman Raymond Lopez.
Thank you, Jackie.
We want to thank Raymond for coming in, Alderman Lopez rather, for coming in.
Raymond's fine. I won't hold it against you.
Oh, okay. Shucks. Oh, never mind. Anyway, yeah, Raymond stepped in at last minute for another guest, but this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to have Alderman Lopez tell you a little bit about himself. Now, I know I do want to show you this. This is our sponsor, Civil Rights Agenda, located 2129 Northwestern Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, and their phone number is there. They appreciate any help you can give them as far as volunteering and so on and so forth. So don't be bashful about calling them and asking questions or offering to help or whatever the case may be. Anyway, Alderman Lopez, I know you are, because Jacob gave me a little bit of background, and I looked a little bit on the on the internet, but you are also a member of the LGBT caucus. That's what I was trying to say. I couldn't think of the word. As you can tell, this is certainly not rehearsed. Anyway.
It's the best part. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're just...
We'll wing it.
Talk about winging it. Woo. Yes, we are. No. But we invite. Now, explain to some of the people exactly what the caucus does. That's in addition to being an alderman, right? Mm-hmm. And what does the caucus actually do? What is...
Well, for starters, if I may, Jackie,
Mm-hmm.
actually I am one of the 5 openly gay members of the Chicago City Council. We formed the LGBT caucus
Mm-hmm.
this term because now there's 10% of the city council is openly gay or lesbian. So that's a huge milestone, more than most cities can say.
Do we have any transgenders that are...
Not yet.
No?
I say not yet, but there's always room for improvement, so you never know.
Absolutely.
And actually, I was one of the, along with Alderman Rosa, the first 2 openly gay Latino aldermen elected in Chicago. I was elected in 2015 with Alderman Rosa, but I have a very special distinction because I am the only Southside openly gay alderman or elected official, period.
Okay.
So I'm the only one south of North Avenue, a distinction that I'm very proud of. And I think that helps answer and segue into the question of what the caucus does, because the goal of the LGBT caucus is to bring the issues of our communities as they relate to both LGBTQ issues,
Mm-hmm.
but also how we relate to our communities and how we can broaden our issues to not just be our issues, but to be the entire city's issues. And we're using our collective political representation and power to do that and to use that dialogue when it comes to budget, when it comes to resources, when it comes to the dialogue with police and community, in every
Mm-hmm.
aspect of city government life. We're making sure that as a caucus that we're taking care of not only our wards, but
Mm-hmm.
also that issue that binds us all together, and that's the other family we all belong to.
Excellent, excellent. That is great. Well, and that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you is, because I have another show that I do on Sundays. It's a weekly show. It's on the internet, and it's an hour long. Starts at 2 o'clock. I would love to have you come on that show sometime, quite frankly.
Not a problem.
I have, and the other show has been on the internet, on the air for like four plus years. October, it'll be 5 years. We started in 2011, October 2011. And I've had a number of Latino trans women on the show. And they say that, and I wanted to find out if this is changing. They say it is very difficult in the Latino community to present as transgender. I'm just wondering if that is getting better.
I think historically it's always been very rough, not only for individuals who are transgender, but even if
The
just
whole community.
any member of any color of the rainbow that's trying to come out within not only the Latino community but also the African American community has always been, unfortunately, historically more difficult, in part because of strong religious beliefs and affiliations. We are seeing, I think, some degree of improvement in the communities, especially as more people have come out. More people are refusing to stay in the closet. They want to show that we are just like everybody else. We just happen to have better taste in partners.
Right, there you go. Exactly.
But I think that there's still a long way to go, because we definitely are still seeing members of our community in those communities that are still being forced into homelessness or forced into lifestyles that are not healthy, simply because their families and surrounding areas are not as accepting as they should be. And I think that as individuals become more engaged and more acclimated to people on an everyday basis, they tend to see that it's not something different or to be feared. It's just that person's life, and we need to respect that. So we'll get there. There's more work to be done, but I think the best way for us is to just keep plugging away and presenting ourselves to the rest of the community, saying, look, we're here just like you are.
Right. Well, the first thing I wanted to touch was, Lilith, you said something about the difficulty, and this is not just specific to Latino or African American communities or any specific community. It is difficult for LGBTQIAs to gain acceptance and tolerance. Right now, we know for a fact that 40% of all of the youth suicides are transgenders. 60% of all the homeless youth are transgenders who've been kicked out of their homes. For those that have seen like the Jazz Jennings show, having that kind of parental support and acceptance is not easy to find.
No.
At all. And you also mentioned something else earlier about religion. How do we get the various religious organizations to kind of back off of the rhetoric that is so inflammatory towards the LGBTQI community?
You know, I don't think there's a very easy or simple answer or even politically correct one. I think sometimes it's, for lack of a better term, trial by fire for not only the individual, but more so for the religious institution, until they are forced to truly confront the persecution that some of our communities face. I will tell you that when I ran for alderman, there was a very concerted effort to try and make my sexuality an issue, to make both me and my partner's relationship, our family, an issue.
We have a caller.
Okay.
Caller, go ahead. Do you have a question or a comment? Caller? Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You have a
I
question?
can hardly hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me
I
now?
wanted to know who is the ward committeeman of the 20th ward?
Of the 20th ward, that would be Kevin Bailey.
Yes.
Yeah? Can you hear
What's
me?
his number?
I don't have his number, but I'm sure we could get it to you
Yes.
at some point after the show. Or you can call my office and we'll help you get it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, caller, for calling
You
in.
want me to leave my number?
We'll get
you
it.
can-
We'll get it off the air. How's that?
Or you can leave it with the lady that answered the call.
That's all good.
Okay.
Thank you for being kind.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See, I chalk one up for another round of positive LGBT interaction.
Exactly.
But as I was saying about the church and all of that, sometimes when they see the kind of issues that we have to deal with and the kind of hatred that we have to deal with, the church community, the actual members, can oftentimes fight back and see that it's even repugnant to them. And that was a case that happened in my neighborhood on the southwest side, was that the attacks against me and my family were so personal and so horrible to the community at large that it actually offended almost the entire portion of the southwest side that I represent. And it helped us completely shift the conversation to see how are we treating each other.
Exactly.
Is the fact that someone is LGBT a deal killer, so to speak, and they actually made it a point to say we're better than this. So sometimes it can be somewhat cathartic, but unfortunately someone still has to go through it as we did.
Right.
But
Right.
we are far better for it.
Yeah, I think it does. Okay, we have another caller. Hello, caller.
Good evening, Jackie. For disclosure purposes, I'm going to say it like this. I don't like no city alderman. Change their name from city alderman to Ward Lord. Because when you look at seeing what's happening, they raising the property taxes up left to right. And they sit back on these tip funds, millions of dollars, robbing the poor people left and right. They mismanaged funds, misappropriated funds, and they make $128,000 a year. They make more money than a state rep or a state senator. And they keep coming up with different types of ways to tax the poor people of Chicago out. And when you look around, especially in my neighborhood, in terms of the property taxes, it's ridiculous. If you miss paying one installment, guess what? Some business from out of the state, they come and claim your property. And every time you look around, these warlords, I say warlords, keep raising the property taxes up, and they act like property taxes is like their ATM machine. If I had my way, we don't need to have so many of these warlords sitting in the city council. And I wish people would pay attention to what's going on. They make $128,000, and then some of these properties they buy. They get real cheap. A lot of them got real heavy investment in property. So
Okay,
pay
let's.
attention to what these warlords in the city of Chicago is doing, because they're taxing you out. And you look around a little bit longer, we all probably going to be living in cardboard boxes because we're not paying attention to what these warlords doing, and we're going to be like in medieval days, like the serfs. That's all I wanted to say.
Let's give the alderman a chance to answer or speak to that, and I've got an idea too for it. But I would like the alderman to have a chance to address that, because I don't know that you can blame any one person for that kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure they take votes on whether to raise taxes or not, and so to say any particular alderman is for or against is impossible for us to say. Alderman, what would you respond with?
Well, I think it's easier to call me alderman than warlord on a daily basis. I don't think Warlord Lopez rings as well as Alderman Lopez, but
and I think you're much better than a warlord.
thank you. I would hope so. A couple things. First off, obviously we know there's a lot of anger and resentment towards raising taxes, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. I was one of the ones who voted to increase the property taxes this last budget cycle. And I did that because the role of government is to pay for services. Services come at a price. And unfortunately in this city, we have not had a tax increase in almost 20 years because it was politically unacceptable to acknowledge that prices were going up. 20 years ago, gas is not the same as it is today. Buying a car is not the same as it was 20 years ago. The prices have gone up. Labor has gone, everything has gone up.
Oh, exactly.
except how much the city collected in taxes. To cover that, the city began a huge borrowing campaign, which most of you know it is never a good idea to borrow on your credit cards or take out a second line of credit from your mortgage simply to pay for basic services. But that's what we did as a city. Now, we are working to correct that. None of us ever want to be in that situation again because, to be honest, most of the budget and debt problems started when I was still in high school.
Right.
I don't want the high school kids now to have to go through things simply because we punted again for another 20 years. Will some of the decisions we have to make be painful? Yes. Are we trying to mitigate that pain as much as we can so that we can still help the most amount of people with all the services we need? In particular, like we're talking about LGBTQ services, to pay for homeless youth shelters for LGBTQ costs money. To be able to provide the programs in CPS so that we can assimilate transgender and non-transgender students without having the kind of animosity or acrimony in a single building costs money. And that is where your taxes go. That is what part of what we're trying to produce money for.
Exactly.
And as long as the role of our government is still to provide and to help our residents, all of our residents and all their communities, we will have to make those decisions.
Well, I think too, it's a big issue for national politics, and we can see that one of the big issues within our country, national politics, is that we can raise taxes, but the problem is the people in the top hierarchy, the 1% of the people, or 1% of the rich for that matter, find it very easy to sway our Congress, whether it's state or federal, into including tax breaks that the middle class and the poor people don't get.
We can't afford lawyers to hire to figure out how to do it.
So part of our problem is that the average person.
Hello, I'm back on again.
Huh?
But how can you explain all these taxes? If you have all these audit committees and all these finance committees, what the heck they've been doing if Chicago is so much in dire straits? And we look at the city of Chicago in terms of the police department, we got $500 million in lawsuits since 2004, and we got over $1 billion in lawsuits. So we are too busy paying off these crooked cops.
Well, that is a very good question. No, that is a very good question when you ask what have they been doing, because the they that you're referring to is not the person you're speaking to. All right, they said
Chicago Public School is $1 billion. No.
Okay, let Alderman Lopez answer the question. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I just alluded to, is that people have been kicking this can down the road for so long that now we're 20 years in, a whole generation has grown up in a government run by debt. Some of us do not want to continue that. But you can't simply say, well, what have they been doing? Because that doesn't solve where we got to go. Sure, we can point the fingers. Sure, there is blame for the management or mismanagement or the lack of oversight that brought us here. But simply saying, well, because that didn't happen, well, we don't want to pay for it now. You had every right as a voter to raise these issues. You could have ran for alderman. You could have made it an issue starting in your own neighborhood to ask, how are we getting new schools and who's paying for them? How are we getting all these new police stations, fire stations? Who's paying for them? Nobody asked questions, not even the residents in many of the areas that benefited, because we were benefiting from things that were being paid for by debt. We all basically turned a blind eye for 20 years. Now it's time to face the music. And unfortunately, even if we want to blame everybody, it's still not going to produce the results that we need, which is to move our city forward. I'm certain you do not want your kids to have to deal with double the debt that you're looking at dealing with now. I know I wouldn't want my children, if I had them, to deal with that. I don't want my neighborhoods to deal with that. But that requires some tough decisions, and that's what hopefully a lot of our aldermen, including myself, were elected to deal with.
It's not easy Because I've been there. I've been president of companies. I've also been president of different organizations, and you start out at a point, and I started out as trustee or this, that, or the other thing, and you try to work for what the people want, but again, the majority rules, and it's in any organization, in any group, the majority, and unfortunately, you've got situations where maybe pockets of the city it doesn't affect as much as other pockets of the city. Okay, and you have an alderman in one pocket, just like representatives or senators, state or federal, that have more influence than other people. And that's just kind of part of life, okay?
And I want to mention one thing also, Jackie. We were talking about the purpose of the caucus and its goals.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we are in a very difficult economic environment where we not only have to look at revenue sources, otherwise known as taxes and fees, but also cuts. And cuts to service, cuts to programs, and cuts to things to try and lean government down to the point where we can make it manageable for those individuals living in our city. And I think part of the goal of our caucus is to ensure that for the LGBTQ community, that those cuts don't come at our expense.
Right.
Because like many populations, like you just said, 40% suicide rate. When I was growing up, it was the first question they ever asked if anyone was found out to have tried to commit suicide.
Right.
Are you gay or lesbian? Because that usually was the prime indicator that why you were trying to commit suicide. Our goal is to ensure that as sacrifices have to be made, that they are not made and borne solely on the backs of our community and other communities that are struggling. In the case of LGBTQ Caucus, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to provide the resources for our youth and for our seniors, as
Absolutely.
Alderman Tunney has done a wonderful job, and I think even Alderman Moreno has another project for LGBTQ housing I think he's working on. So we are working to ensure that those very dollars that this caller mentioned, these TIF dollars and other programs, that they're actually being put to work in the community to help the residents who need it most and those populations that need it most that are so often overlooked in the headlines.
Exactly.
So,
and one other point, and I can kind of attest to what Alderman Lopez is saying, because I am president of the National Organization for Women's DuPage County chapter. We have a meeting once a month, okay? I don't get paid to be there. It's my free time, okay? But where we meet, they don't give us free time. We pay for the room that we meet in, okay? So it's just that way. Caller, we have another caller. Hello? Caller?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We're good.
Huh?
Yes, we're good. Go ahead.
I said, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to tell me y'all doing a good job.
Oh.
And what's the topic going about y'all doing? Y'all talk about y'all's, right?
Well, actually, the show is mainly for the LGBTQ community, but we're here to talk
Okay,
about.
what I'm trying to say, okay, now, that's what I was going to say to y'all.
Beg pardon?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I said, I think our man ain't doing no good job, because he need to go.
Okay.
And, because, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Stop being nosy.
Well, I can, so apparently the callers expressed some discontent with our mayor, and obviously there are a number of individuals in this city who voice their opinion on the mayor. But I think that we always have to keep in mind something very important, which is that the mayor right now is trying to clean up Chicago. clean up its financial mess, which is a huge burden. It's a burden most everyday Chicagoans do not understand. The burden that all the debt we've taken on, the impact that it has, and the impact it has on us to be able to do our function as government.
Right.
Nobody likes being told no, they can't go spending and shopping and spending money. I know my husband doesn't like hearing it from me, so I know the mayor telling the city is just magnified 3 million fold. So I think that we have to remember the circumstance and remember that he is doing the job that we elected him to do, which was clean up our financial mess.
Well, and one last thing. I think we've got to wrap up here real quick, but I want to say one last thing regarding jobs. It's not the aldermans, the legislators, the mayor, the governor, they ultimately do not create jobs. The jobs are created by corporations, and when those corporations are allowed to send jobs overseas, which they do because they can have, you know, salaries of 25 cents an hour or something like that, then the government can't really do much about it. So until we, as the people, you know, demand that corporations stop that, we're going to have jobs leaving the country. Alice Chalmers wants to build a new plant down in Mexico and send all the jobs down there. You know, that's why we're losing them, folks. That's why we're losing them. Okay. Well, I want to thank all the callers for calling in. We had a very interesting discussion, and we're very happy with that. I want to thank once again Alderman Raymond Lopez for being with us.
My pleasure.
I think it was a privilege and an honor to have him here. Okay, so from all of us here to all of you there, we hope you tune in next month, same time, same bat station, and from us, you know, goodbye.
Take care, guys.